Illinois passed this law at a time when the whole country was scrambling to pass these sweeping criminal justice reform laws. None of them stuck. Illinois did. Illinois stuck. They passed it. The legislature passed the law. The people spoke. It's democracy. The will of the people was that this law was passed. It was passed, and now it's being held up in court because some people are trying to overturn the will of the people.
The decision handed down by the Illinois Supreme Court means that until further notice, every county in the state must maintain a cash bail system, a decision that was made hours before those provisions were set to go into effect in parts of the state.
It's so important for people to understand that there's literally no such thing as an affordable money bond when you are talking about poverty and the fact that people have children to feed and bills to pay. And people have varying levels of a support system and sometimes no support system at all. Nobody to come for them, nobody to come free them. I sat and listened to a woman who talked about what it was like to sit in jail for months because of a $100 bond. $100. And she talked about how damaging it was for her self-worth to be like, am I not even worth $100? Nobody has $100 to come get me out of here. And this is a Black woman. Why in this country that has such a marred history with putting price tags on people's freedom are we still trying to put price tags on people's freedom? Make it make sense.
The Pretrial Fairness Act, I think, is most notably known for ending the use of money bond in Illinois. But I think more accurately what it does is that it kind of reconfigures the decision-making process of what happens to a person when they're awaiting trial. So right now, when somebody goes in front of a judge after they're arrested, a judge has to make a decision about what happens to them. And about half the time, what a judge will do is they'll say, you're eligible to be released, but you've got to pay a certain set of dollars to the system to secure your freedom.
Money bond was never meant to be a method to detain people pre-trial, to jail people pre-trial. It was supposed to be something that people could deposit as an assurity that they would come back to court. So the fact that it's being used in thousands of cases to keep people in jail pre-trial is an abuse of that tool.
Jail is a form of purgatory in the sense that you don't know when you're going to get out, you don't know when your case is going to be over, and that puts your entire life on hold. So poverty becomes the marker by which we determine who gets to remain in jail and who gets to be released from jail. And we know through tons of statistical studies, as well as anecdotally, right, that people who are able to fight their criminal cases outside of jail, be able to reintegrate into their community while they are while their case is pending, have better outcomes, both in terms of their criminal cases as well as their lived lives, right? Because pulling people from communities is traumatic. If they can re-engage into the community, be able to actually work, to actually keep their home, keep their benefits, be with their children, whatever have you, right? They can more meaningfully engage in their criminal cases, and we find that they have a higher likelihood of being able to succeed in their cases.
I basically ended up in Cook County through like the Black Lives Matter protest back in 2020. I had participated with some people going down there because of the George Floyd and then I think Breonna Taylor. When my bond was set at 200,000 D, which was 20,000 a bond, I was like, wow. I was like, it's so absurd that this is happening to me for doing something that I felt like was right. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm protesting for justice. I was in jail for Approximately 6 months. Knowing that I don't have this money, knowing that I'm not getting out of jail, knowing that a lot of things that fell on me are now on my wife, knowing that I have kids out there who are constantly throwing the question, where's my dad? Or where's Bigley? Or when's my dad coming home from school? That right there, like that impact, man, it's a blow that'll forever hurt, you know? It's a scar that'll forever leave a feeling behind, not an image, not a look, a feeling, you know. And so if anybody want to ever have the slightest thing to ask me, does jail still impact my everyday life to this day? Yes, it does.
What happens is incarceration, it exacerbates cycles of trauma and violence, and it perpetuates cycles of those things in people's lives. And so you take someone out of a bad situation, you put them in a worse situation, and then you spit them back out into another bad situation. What do you think you're gonna get? You've done nothing to actually interrupt what's happening here. And so people, people might go into the system actually with a softer heart and come out hardened because they have been put in such inhumane conditions. And people go in, even if people are able to maintain the strength of their character, situationally, they're coming out with an X on their back that makes it harder to do everything you need to do to live a stable life. It's harder to get a job, it's harder to get housing, it's harder to get anything that you need. And so, if we know that people already engage in criminalized behavior because they are trying to survive, and then we do something that makes it harder for them to survive, what do you expect to happen?
I think it's the fear-mongering. I think it's a lot of right-wing and conservative talking points are, the purge law, is that what they called it?
2023, the following things are going to affect it. People need to be aware of this. It abolishes cash bail for almost every offense.
It's ridiculous, but I think that is a big, that is a big obstacle, because I think like people hear that and they get scared. Like normal, everyday people, they hear, they're like, oh, they're gonna let every criminal out of jail. This guy had a gun, they're gonna let him out of jail. That you hear that and that could be scary. But then you realize what is actually scary is just how fundamentally cruel and unfair the system is.
Republicans spent literally $30+ million last fall to spread false information about the Pretrial Fairness Act across the state of Illinois. Fake newspaper, thousands of them printed and sent to every corner of this state to misinform people about what this reform is and what it's going to do.
What do we want? When do we want it?
This idea that people can buy their freedom is something that I think people thought we got rid of a long time ago, but we really didn't in America, right? This is quite frankly a vestige of slavery. And this idea that families are making decisions across the state about whether they should pay their rent or pay for their loved one's freedom, just that there's no place for that in civil society. So I'm really glad that we had brave organizers and advocates, both people inside the system and outside the system, that were willing to take a critical look at whether this system of money bond should exist. And I'm glad that that we came to a conclusion, a democratic solution, that this should be no more.
My hope, right, for the future is that this is one of multiple really important steps to move the needle towards addressing the systemic issues that we have in terms of systemic and structural racism and classism in this country that has led us down the path that we currently are, with a disproportionate representation of low-income communities of color, predominantly Black and Latino communities, both in the criminal legal system, in jails, and in prisons.
The new system will be more rigorous, not less rigorous than the current one. We will be more safe, not less safe.
This would be the most progressive bail reform law in the United States. And this would be the first of its kind. And this could be a catalyst for nationwide change in states that have the legislative will and the votes to get it done. Like, this would be huge.